I have been so excited to talk about this story, this manga, this world, this character, this art. Everything about Centuria right now has just impressed me. And I cannot emphasize enough how much all of you should be reading it. Because to put simply, I think it has one of the biggest, brightest futures. And I don't say that all too often. I tend to get pretty comfortable with stories and don't really say all too much whether they have a bright future or not, depending on if I genuinely think that. This is one of those times where I pray, where I have my hands together, I'm on my knees, I'm like, listen, if there's any story that I don't want to get cancelled, it is this one. Take the axe away from it, let it thrive. If you know nothing about Centuria, sit back, I'm going to tell you all about it. But firstly, I need to give you crucial, very important information about the context of this story and where the author actually comes from. Once again, this is an assistant of Tatsuki Fujimoto, the author of Chainsaw Man, and that in itself kind of sells the story. It seems these days there's more and more assistants popping up that have worked on Chainsaw Man or Fire Punch, even Chainsaw Man Part 2 potentially, are going off and doing their own thing, and all of them are cooking. They have some nasty experience underneath their belt, and they're putting it to work. I have adored and loved every story that all of Fujimoto's assistants have gone on to produce, and I don't just like them because they're in relation to Fujimoto. You may consider me the biggest glazer of Tatsuki Fujimoto, and that's okay, but I also want to glaze these stories independently, and not just in the cheek, but entirely down my throat. Centuria is just another one added directly to that list, so if you needed any reasoning, any idea, any excuse to go and read this story, this is the easiest one. An ex-assistant of Tatsuki Fujimoto starting their own medieval fantasy, very dark and brooding-esque story. And there's two other stories that share nothing in common that I believe Centuria is a perfect combination of both. The first one, Vinland Saga, and the second, Berserk. Now you might think of that and be like, well, wait, hold on. Does that work? Can that be possible? Sure, medieval, dark fantasy, that kind of sounds really cool. But like Vikings and stuff? I guess it works. It's kind of normal. It's kind of not. I guess it depends on the author, right? Correct. And this is where Centuria thrives. This is what it's all about, because I was curious on how far it would go into like the dark, brooding fantasy aspects of it, right? And the more that chapter's released, the more I've seen, the more it's expanded upon itself, the more I am sold that this is going to be dark, unforgiving, and just full of very creative, lucrative, eldritch type beings. I am excited to talk about this story, this world, these characters. So with all the context out the way, let us begin. Centuria starts off heavy. This is our main character. His name is Julian, and we don't really know how old Julian is. He's probably in his early teenage years, maybe 13, maybe 15, maybe 16. Hard to tell. But Julian doesn't really have anything related to him. No family, no friends, nothing. He's just a wanderer, and he finds himself on a boat as a slave. Now this boat is already filled with slaves, 100 of them to be precise, and Julian is number 101. He's technically not meant to be on board, doesn't matter. Now this boat is supposed to be going to a different location, a different coastline, but the captain has something else in mind. He wants to sail to a very secretive, isolated pocket of ocean that no ships should travel through. And the reason why they don't want to travel through these waters is because maybe, supposedly, there's some weird, evil, horrible things going on. That's implied, but no one's ever seen it, no one knows the proof about it, it's just speculation. It's enough to scare people off. Think the Bermuda Triangle, but if someone came back and said they seen a demonic god within the waters, you wouldn't want to go there. However, the captain does not listen, and he takes his boat there, and he starts to execute and kill off all the slaves. Now you're probably thinking, why is he doing this? What's the point of buying slaves just to kill them off? So he actually wants to claim insurance on their bodies. He doesn't really need them, he just wants the money. So over the next handful of days of that travel, all of these innocent people start to get killed, and they get thrown into the water. Now Julian at this time has made friends with a lot of these people. He's come closer to them, and again, it's only been a couple of days, but he's never really had human connection before. He becomes very close with this woman who is heavily pregnant, and she kind of serves as a motherly figure to towards him. She's the kindest, she has a lot of compassion and care, and she treats Julian kind of like her own son. It's a beautiful relationship in the hardship and disgusting nature of this world, and it's finding that compassion within the rough that nurtures Julian's character to what it is today. When everyone starts getting killed off, Julian sacrifices himself for this woman, but something weird happened. Because all of these dead bodies have been thrown into the water, the weird, murky Bermuda Triangle demonic god actually spawns from the ocean. It's this entity or being that is here to bestow any type of wish. Now, the only reason that it is here is because a large amount of bodies have been sacrificed to it by accident. No one knew it was here, it just spawned. So the first person that it encounters is Julian and his mother figure. Now, Julian was gonna cop the L. He's like, you know what, you've shown me so much kindness, I'll sacrifice my own life. You can have the wish that comes with it. It's like a two-parter. A bunch of dead bodies need to be sacrificed, and then something very close and personal of the person that's going to obtain the wish. The mother, however, cannot do it. She cannot allow Julian to take his own life because it reminds her of a son that she previously had who unfortunately passed away. So, in a turn of events, she forces herself to give birth. She cuts out her child, which is crazy already. A little bit early, but perfectly okay, and hands the child to Julian, and she sacrifices herself. So Julian now obtains this wish. Mind you, there's all conflict going on in the background. Everyone's fighting each other. The wish that Julian makes is more conceptual. It's not like a have more strength, have more power or anything, but more so along the lines of seeing good within the world. So the entity grants him that, but also something else. A slew of powers that is a combination of all 100 slaves. So basically, everyone that has been sacrificed, every slave on that ship is bundled together and now a part of Julian, which means he has 100 lives. He has the strength, speed, intellect, everything of combination going back into him as like a vessel, which is beautifully portrayed. The look of these powers is more fantasy, eldritch, demonic in a way. It's nothing unfamiliar that you haven't seen before, but it's also enough to kind of spark the difference. You can tell that Julian is now operating on a different wavelength. He has a different type of power. He's faster, he's stronger, he's out of this world. This creature disappears. Very, very powerful being, and the only people remaining on this ship after Julian attacks everyone is himself and Diana, and that is the name of the child that his motherly figure gave birth to. Now, what you've just heard is only the first chapter. A brilliant, strong setup. Super, super strong. Even though you've heard it here, I recommend going back and reading it because artistically it's gorgeous. The author does not hold back at all. I love this. It's an interesting premise. It feels heavily influenced by Vinland Saga with that dark, berserk-like fantasy. But more so in the Vinland aspect, Julian is very passive. It feels like the second stage of Thorfinn's journey, trying to be a pacifist and trying to find forgiveness and trying to help people and not really trying to fight. But that flips around pretty quickly. Julian does want to help people. Julian does want to kind of navigate life, but he also has to protect the child, which now is basically considered his little sister, Diana. Even though he's a pseudo parent, he doesn't know anything about parenting. So when he lands on this new area that he's never been to before, it's kind of a bit of a struggle. It's luckily enough that he finds people that are willing to help him and kind of gets situated within a nice little small village. At first, they didn't really like Julian. They were kind of unsure about him. He's like a drifter or a floater, but Julian showed that he would work incredibly hard without using his abilities, of course, to make Diana's life worthwhile. This would be interrupted very quickly because there is a forest next to this village, and in the deeper roots of this forest, no one has ever returned from, and some conflict happens. Some drama happens. Within that forest is kind of the equivalence of a demigod, kind of. At least that's what you can assume. You actually see it a little bit, and it's not the big wolf creature that Julian fights. If you know, you know. But it has a similar energy and presence to the other entity that gave Julian his powers to begin with. So we're kind of walking down this path of very crazy, eldritch, high entity, powerful conceptual beings that are way too strong for this world, that pour onto this darkness and atrocity and disgustingness, mutate basically everything surrounding them. These things are hunting Julian, and it makes me think that maybe these gods or entities don't really vibe with each other. And there's one reason for this. Diana and Julian are technically born from the sea. Diana is quite literally born from the sea, and Julian got his powers at sea. But when you see the entities for the first time, they're kind of a representation of their own environments. Maybe they don't like each other. There's nothing to realistically confirm this, but it does seem like it's going down that path, and it makes me so excited just to see how technical it can become. Because I'm already in love with this setting. I'm already in love with Julian and all of these other characters, and especially the artwork, darkness that this author can actually produce that's so creative and creepy. I applaud this story. It's worth your time to read it. It's worth checking out, and I promise you, you will really be interested. What are you doing? Go read it. Go give it a chance. I want to hear your thoughts about it. If you have, come back and let me know your thoughts. I want to hear what people think. I want to know.